so I didn't try to get in.
Yeah.
Something the ring.
I don't
Something the
know.
ring. Hello? Let me call you back.
Okay.
Hello.
All right, it look like we're on.
Yeah.
I know we kind of like. I see why I don't know when we go on in there. We had some technical difficulties. I imagine a little delay, but it seems like we're on now. Private citizen spoons in the house, and of course the venerable Joe Cowie, former mayor, former
Okay, good.
politician.
Push.
Oh, you're the aunt, Jeremy, and you look like you make up people. They they treat you bad. What they going?
No,
Are you
no, it's
here?
just my dog. My guard dogs are barking. That's all.
All right, all
I
right.
want to make sure that I am seeing the private citizen spooners.
Are you seeing him
I'm
now?
right here.
Yes, but somehow I want to ask you this question. If I remember well, you have a look at your father.
Who he does?
Yeah,
His father wasn't so
Yeah, I look
ugly.
like my dad. Yeah, I look like my
yeah.
dad.
I'm watching you and I said, wait a
He's
minute,
a better version.
that's right. I remember him and he better very much looks like you. Anyhow,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was his father a decent fellow or a scurvy like him?
though he was neither distant, but he was decent.
Okay. All right. As long as you never left no legacy of bad feelings behind, it seemed
Nope.
it seemed like you've been able to hang on his coattail and get through all right.
As
Uh,
far as I know, there's not. There's only one person when I was on Wave Radio had called up and said that my father took him to court. Blah blah blah. But what had happened is that the person went into to housing and planning and stole my dad's plans and redrew it and sold it to somebody else. And my father recognized all his trademark in the plans, and he called him out on it. So that was the only one person that ever
and
had
he had
anything
the
bad.
nerve to complain. He had the nerve to complain. On top of that, there was a guy who got
Yeah,
sued.
he called up on the radio station, and I remember the situation because my dad told me about it. Yeah,
Okay, interesting. He
yeah.
was an architect, right? From where?
Yes. If
England.
Joe can tell you, I think if anybody when an architect does a drawing, he has to submit the plans to housing and planning, and those are up to public scrutiny. Public could go and look at it, and I believe he went in there and he saw the plans and he copied them, and he sold them as his plans. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, he should have been taken to court for something like that.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, listen, we're on this
I don't
Thursday
think he was
again.
taken to court, but my father called out to him. Yeah, called him out. Yeah.
All right. You're good.
Sorry, G, mate. Go ahead.
No one. All right. So we're doing this Thursday night show tonight. We're expecting Gregory to come in at some point. We were thinking that for long we have been threatening to do a circular thing where each one of us are the guests on any specific night. And we voted that we go with Joe first. We also wanted to do a continuation of last week's political analysis dealing with the government, the PUP government as 2000 and no, it was 98 to 2008, correct, Joe?
That's right.
And of course, somewhere along the line, things went terribly wrong, as they usually do in the second term of most governments. Is it that governments get complacent or believe that they're not going to get many more than two, so they better fill up their pockets while they have a chance? What's this second term blues about?
Well, if you would allow me to, before I go to the second term, I would like to kind of put the 98 2008 PUP government in historical perspective, if that is okay. Then, of course, okay, answer the question. But I asked for that opportunity to do this because those of us who are maybe in the 70s would have experienced it, but if they are not there, they could have read about it. I think you can recall that in the 70s, 80s, the whole world was going through a serious economic upheaval. There was tax revolts, there was national debts, and it come to the notice of particularly some of the European countries that the traditional bureaucracy was no longer responding to the legitimate needs of the people. And what emerged in that period was a shift away from what was known as the traditional bureaucracy that we experienced here because it was passed on to us as a colony. And in a sense, it was simple an input output type bureaucracy. In other words, we put in money, and at the end of the day, we audited to see whether the money was put that way. But we never did attempt to try to determine the outcome and the results of the money we put in. So they felt that we need to begin to take a look, and this was done by some theorists. You had theorists and you had practitioners who begin to look at the public sector and try to see how they could introduce some of that business principles into it, where you can more measure your performance of the public sector and look at what the results are from the input and the outputs. And that was what was referred to in the late 70s and 80s as the MPM. That was the new public management. And I think Margaret Thatcher has gone down now in history as being one of the first to begin to apply what she did understood to have been the new public management. And then he began to sweep through the world. He went into Australia, he went into New Zealand, he went into Africa. And I put that there because what happened, I could say this, that two of the highlights, what we consider the two highlights that are hallmarks that characterize the 98-2008 PUP government was in fact one, reform. The PUP 98-2008 was very much committed to a public sector reform and to bring about the same new public management. And the new public management was very much promoted by the Inter-American Development Bank. So they were on board with us. And I will speak briefly because I just want to limit my time to kind of introduce what I would like to talk about. There were several papers that we had prepared before, and then when we came into government, the attempt to implement. And I will speak of a few of them because I was personally involved in many of them, of course. And the overall one of the public sector reform, that was one that I think was of the highest level, to the point that we coordinated public sector reform with the CARICOM countries. And with the help of the European Union and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, we developed a public sector reform agenda, what we call the way forward for the CARICOM countries. And the government of 98-2008 was the first to look at these reforms and begin to design new systems for implementing public sector reform generally. And then we begin to go down into very different disciplines of the reform. For example, we did the health sector. And the health sector to me was something that we should learn from, in the sense that the government of Esquivel had attempted to try to begin to introduce some of those reforms of the new public management, but not to the extent that the PUP did. But one of them that he certainly did was the health system. He was the first to diagnose the health system as it was then. And this was an important point that even the IMF and then picked up on, that democratic efficiency is what is important in democratic countries, where if one political party have designed a reform plan, you would want to know that when the party leaves government, the next one will come up with another approach. So what we were able to do is that in the health sector reform, the UDP governments begin the diagnosis, saw what was wrong. They had a group from right within CARICOM countries, a Cambridge group, and they did the diagnosis. And then when we came to government in '98, we had adopted from the same group. In fact, we kept one of them and the name of Mr. Norris, Dr. Norris. His name was Norris. He happened to be a member of the Cambridge group. And he stayed on with us because, we had to design. And that was when I was Minister of Health. We designed the new health system for this country. A 15-page paper has emerged. And that is one of our highlights of reform in '98, 2008. So we did the public sector, we did health, we did education, we did works. We actually did works. And one of the new changes we did was instead of the Ministry of Works continue to be in-house carrying out projects like building roads and whatnot, we decided we'll outsource it. And what we will do, we will build within the Ministry of Works a group of experts, engineers, who will help them to design what we want. And then we tender it out to the private sector. So we no longer was going to engage in in-house construction of infrastructures like roads. Whatever we could have outsourced, we did. So that was in that case. We also did some reform of the tax system. And again, we had the support of the Inter-American Development Bank, and I headed that one also, a tax system reform for the country. And we went on into the judiciary, and then we had touched most of the other sectors. So I would say that the idea of a reform, which was sweeping the world in the late 70s and 80s, that the PUP government of '98, 2008 was the first government to have developed a widespread public sector reform for this country. As we move on, we will look at maybe why it didn't succeed as it could have. The next highlight of the PUP government of that period, and this one I think is very interesting, is that at the time we realized that the private sector was known to be the engine of growth. And it was the private sector was supposed to drive the economy, and the public sector was to create the enabling environment. That still holds today. But we were decided that we will make a departure from the private sector driving the economy. And that was when we developed this policy. And again, we had the support of the international financial institutions, which we had called the public sector driven expansionary policy. We thought that the government can fast track growth and development in the country. And rather than waiting for the commercial banks in particular, and of course, we then developed the DFC, and instead of waiting for them to drive the development through fundings from them, the government decided that they will take on the task of providing the funding. And that was when we went out and we really began to borrow money, apart from the traditional financial institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, the Caribbean Development Bank. Then CABEA came on board at the Central American Bank. We borrowed from them. We borrowed from all of the others. We borrowed from the International Bank of Miami to fund this driving of the economy. We got into securitization. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of securitization. It's the first time it was done in Belize. It's not first in the world. Securitization was not of the way of our cycle, and we create more receivables, and then we sell the receivables. Those were things that were not new to the world, but they were new to Belize. They were the first government that attempted to drive the public sector by their creating the funding. So we had all these different sources of fund, and then a large amount. I was one of them who wasn't supportive of full-scale privatization, and I still think we did the wrong thing. I think we should have just gone partially. But some of the funding that was driving the economy came from privatization also. So it is in that period we were selling out all state-owned assets. We sold out the BTL, we sold out the BWSL, we sold out electricity, we sold out the ports, And it was those funding that was also coming in and lending. Now, where were we sending this money? This money was going a lot into businesses. Agriculture got a lot of the money. In social services, before I get into business, we were lending for education. At that time, the government was not providing free education at tertiary level fully. So many students were borrowing money and they were getting at very low cost. Then we gone and we lend money into the agricultural sector to drive the agricultural sector. Then we gone into tourism and we lended a tremendous amount of money in tourism to also drive tourism. We gone into housing and millions of dollars we put into housing. Again, this was the idea to drive the economy. But what has happened in that expansionary policy? And this is when I will begin to, some point in the next few minutes, I can conclude my presentation and then we'll go for the discussion. What had happened is that while the policy was an exceptionally good policy, unfortunately, what had happened, and it happened because, one, remember we were using the Development Finance Corporation. Development Finance Corporation at the time had a net worth of about 25 million. We pushed the Development Finance Corporation net worth to over 250, 300 million. But when all of those loans, we were pushing them, there was, I would call it, an overzealousness in driving the expansionary policy. And what happened is that we begin to relent on the prudential rules. So those millions and millions that we were lending, we were investing in infrastructures, in housing, in agriculture, in tourism. We were not enforcing prudential rules to ensure that those funding would have been paid back. And what happened is that the DFC began to get hurt. The money was not coming in back. The securitization, whenever we sell the receivables, and any receivables, for some reason, they were not paying, we pull them back and we give them new ones. That was not the proper way of securitization. When we sell the receivable, we should have sold them with risk and everything because we were discounting them. And that is an important part I must mention. That while we were borrowing money from private sector, especially that bank in Miami, we borrowed millions and millions from them. When we were driving it with the securitization, we were subsidizing the loans. So when we were paying maybe 10, 12% for those loans, when we were getting them off, some people were only charging like 8%, 9%. So we were subsidizing loans. So the government was subsidizing the loans to drive the economy. And if those loans had been done with the greatest prudence, the greatest prudential rules, and they were paid back, I would say that the policy would have been successful. But that is where we went wrong. And when the DFC was the first to begin to go down, then we were lending not as much from the Social Security, and that began to get hurt. And then we found ourselves in a position where the funding that we were, the amount of money that we were borrowing, the kind of borrowing we were doing, we were getting that into the traditional type of borrowing where you pay as a percentage and you pay annually towards the principal plus an interest. We were getting into bulletproof payment, meaning that we borrow maybe for 5 years, 6, 7 years. We don't pay anything during the period except the interest. Then the bullet payment comes at the end. They overpay everything. And what happened to us is that when the year, I think it was around 2004, 2005, there was a payment, a bullet payment of 300 million. Remember at that time, in that period, our budget was only about $1 billion. So we could have never have paid 300 million the next year, which was due. And that was where we had to decide. One, we could not service the debt. Two, the public funds were collapsing. And it was out of that circumstance that came the G7. And I will end on that presentation, and when we come around, I can then more explain the G7 and what were the lessons to be learned. But in essence, I would say this, that there were successes and there were failures, and there was strength and there were weaknesses. But at the end of the day, like all human beings and human institutions, try to make sure our strength outweigh our weaknesses. So I will end on that presentation, hoping that I have given to you a quick oversight, more of what I would call a bird's eye view of a 98-2008 government. And now we can get into the snail's eye view of it, just so wish.
First question. What were we using for collateral in doing all these borrowings?
When we were borrowing and being government, evidently, like when you borrow from, let's go for the traditional type borrowing first. When we borrow from the financial institutions, the international financial institutions, you don't really put a collateral. Your collateral is the government. It's backed by the government. It's
And
not
if you default, what if happens if you default? As we have defaulted on a few of those loans, haven't we?
Yeah.
Okay. And what happens then?
Yeah. Now, when you default, that is when no countries. Normally, you don't hear countries like, let's take a private sector. When you find yourself that you cannot service your debts or your expenditures, you can go for bankruptcy. Globally, it's a thought that they had, but it never did happen. Countries cannot go for bankruptcy. They would not be able to go for bankruptcy. So the best they can do is that they will hold this against the country. The country will not be able to borrow. The country can become a pariah and it will just collapse, which you would try to avoid doing. So when we borrow, for example, when we were borrowing from the private sector, even the private sector, the International Bank of Miami, that was the biggest private sector bank that we borrowed from. Is the government guaranteeing it? The government just guaranteed. So you are taking a risk that the government should normally not collapse. It's not that you can collateralize loans with streets and roads and lands. Government cannot use national assets to collateralize a loan. So they have to borrow just on the strength of a government. And that's the trust they put in there.
Well, all right. Apparently, we have done okay so far because we have not gone under, number one, and we haven't had to declare any kind of bankruptcy. But I'm a bit confused on that though, because if a country would declare bankruptcy, normally the process of bankruptcy, they seize all your assets and can sell it to recover some of the money, is correct, that you had borrowed. Is that basically how that works, or just you declare that and it's written off like that?
Not with countries. With private sector, yes. With a private sector, you borrow, you go under, you can claim bankruptcy. So you have different type of bankruptcy, especially in the US. US have several types. But in most cases, when you declare bankruptcy, as it believes, the bankruptcy is to free you from the indebtedness of the creditors. But it becomes the end of the company. But with government, you cannot really take over a country. A bank lending to the government cannot say, well, listen, we want to take over some roads, we want to take over some land. No. The country banks is borrowing on the basis of the country itself. So when a country is lending, they are lending it to you and they can, knowing that you will be able to pay back.
Let's invite Gregory. Gregory, I don't know if you've been listening for how long, but we decided we'd do a little continuation of last week's show, no? We've gotten off into a number of issues that we weren't able to flesh out comprehensively. I think Joe has agreed that he will put himself up as the guest for this week.
Great.
By the next 4 weeks, 3 weeks or so, we'll alternate, and each one of us will take our turns in the guest spot show of the show. Where Joe, we're looking at a number of areas that the government and 1998 to 2008, you say, embarked on a new public management mode, if you will. We have health, housing, of course, sports, judiciary, infrastructure, education. Where was the government strong and where was it weak during that period?
I think that I would say that the weakness of government, which is not peculiar to Belize, and it has been the weakness of the failure of reforms all over the world. It comes down to the question of the human beings, the human person. And it is said that you can bring the best system, and I said this on this show many times before. You can design the best system for the world, and you can design the best system for the country in a transformation of a reform. But if you do not reform the mindset of the people, the reform will fail. So I would say that where we fail is not in the systems that we are designing, it's not in the policies that we design. The public sector driven expansionary policy was a very good policy.
Did you maybe not do enough to enlighten the people and educate them on the systems that were being put in place? Where does the fault lie here? Is it that the people were just too stubborn to relent and move along with the progress that was possible from all of this, or was the government just not doing enough to convince them that this is the way that we should be going?
It was not that we didn't. I put it this way: it was not that we had to convince them that is the way we were going. They voted for us with the understanding that we will provide for this country what was the mandate given to every government, which is to ensure we fulfill the constitution of the country in terms of our natural rights. All countries with a manifesto, with a constitution, that's a mandate for all governments. So it was not to convince them that where I think we failed is simply we ourselves, the politicians, who relented in doing what should have been done.
So aren't you putting a lot of emphasis on the sophistication of the voters that you said to say that they voted for you for that? Because did the voters really understand, or were they just as usual voting out the old party and putting in the new because they weren't happy with all that was happening? You're suggesting that they voted for you so you were able to do that, but did they really understand the whole schematics behind this new public management system?
I quite frankly, I don't believe that the public at large understood what it meant for a public sector driven expansionary policy. I don't think they understand clearly what was the new public management that was beginning to sweep through the developed countries and developing countries. I don't think that they did. And here is why I am saying that those who emerge from among us to lead a country at a time when the country is in a development process still, a lot of trust is put into us who are elected, because the people generally were not yet sufficiently sophisticated to understand what you were to do. Now, there were many of us in that government of 98-2008 that was clearly sufficiently educated, sufficiently knowledgeable and experienced to understand these policies, to understand. A matter of fact, we got elected in 1998. We got the Inter-American Development Bank. I was the one who approached them, and the prime ministers agreed when they agreed that we will have a session up by what is now that part of the Fort George, where they call the new part, the other side. And we spent 2 days there, the cabinet, with the Inter-American Development Bank, introducing to the cabinet. I had already been through it. So what we were going to discuss is things that I had already done, because I was involved in the public sector reform for many years, first with the United Nations, then with CARICOM. and then with the European Union and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. And we had 2 days of session. And I will give you this, as I said at a meeting there when you were there, when we were at the meeting with the diaspora. One of our ministers, and I said it, but one of our ministers asked the gentleman from the IDB, who became a very good friend of mine. He's an economist, distinguished economist. He asked him if he would prepare to give the cabinet a kind of insight into entrepreneurship. He said, no, he said he won't be able to do that. He said, that's not for him to do. He said, entrepreneurs are like roaches. You see, you create the environment and they will come. No, that is true because it's the government must create the enabling environment. But the point I wanted to make is that we spent 2 days there with the Inter-American Development Bank trying to sensitize those of the cabinet who before were not sufficiently knowledgeable of what the public sector reform was about. Because it, as I said, it started in the late 70s into the 80s, and then it still continues today.
What point would you do you think that things started to go wrong? Because you were elected in 1998, you won the first term, did well the first term apparently, enough to get re-elected in the next term, which was, I believe, 2003. And somewhere around approaching 2005, shit hit the fan. What exactly was the breaking point?
The breaking point was that in the beginning, while we were recycling these funds through securitization, for example, while we were privatizing and bringing in funding, and while we were borrowing, it didn't come to the realization because they needed time that many of the loans were not carried out in accordance with prudential rules. They were getting loans, but they had relented on the prudential rules. But this never manifested itself to some years after. And it was when it began.
Apart from that, though, was the monies being borrowed used prudently, or was there corruption at the root of all of this?
It was evident that, one, when the money was being lent, there was a relaxation of the prudential rules. Secondly, the borrowers themselves had failed to fulfill the terms and conditions of the loan. So, one, the DFC was not getting back the loans that they were lending. That's one of the big areas. The DFC was where a lot of it went through, most of it. Then the public sector was borrowing, and the public sector was not borrowing an annual payment as traditionally we were doing. The public sector was beginning to borrow where we had bullet payments. So you will borrow, and you are borrowing. Now, all you might be doing is servicing the interest, so you can afford that. But when we got into these bullet payments borrowing, we had reached where in 2004, I think it was, we reached a point where the bullet payment, meaning if these loans that you're borrowing, beginning to accumulate, and they all converge in 1 year, some of them. So there was, in that year, 2004, 2005, we had to meet bullet payments of 300 million.
All right, but you're talking about two different issues. The one, you're talking about what the government was lending out, and on the other side, what government was borrowing. You're saying the loans were coming due that you were borrowing, but you were speaking of the loans that you were lending out through the DFC and to the public sector. Did they converge at the same time, come due at the same time, and you weren't able to meet the bullet payments of which you speak?
Right. Let me try to give it to you from a different angle. Normally, traditionally, not only in Belize, many countries, the public sector doesn't drive development. It is driven by the private sector. So much of the funding does not come from the public sector, was not there to lend out money. We are not in the lending except for the DFC, which was to be more private public. They don't normally do it. But this policy that we adopted, which we call the public sector driven expansionary policy, for the first time the country was going to drive the economy through lending. We were to find the money and then lend on to the private sector in all these sectors, and that is what we were doing. But when we were borrowing this money, now when we go to unlend them, and we did not follow the prudential rules, we were somewhat, I would say, relenting to the extent that we were not able to get back the money. So when we can't get back the money, then we cannot pay off our creditors.
What were some of these rules that we weren't abiding by? What
The
did you call them?
prudential rules for any lending institution. One, when you go to a lending institution to borrow, you have to satisfy the lending institution, firstly, that the project that you want to borrow for has the potential of being a viable project. You have to first convince them of that. Secondly, you will have to be able to convince them that that project will be so viable that you can service the debt. Thirdly, you have to convince them that, listen, in most cases, they will say, listen, we will go in up to 75, you go 25. Those are rules that we're all familiar with who borrow from banks. All of them carry the same rules, more or less. They want to know that when they are lending their money, they will be able to get it back. Now, evidently, what we had to be able to do, we were supposed to do the same thing because we were now beginning to borrow money and to unlend. So when we are borrowing, we have to be able to make sure that we are carrying out the same prudential rules that the creditor was putting on us.
Let me welcome to the podium our good friend, the attorney at large, the man himself, Mr. Richard Dickey Bradley. Dickey, welcome. And Dickey said he has been listening to you, and he got one lot of things where in a year where he got questions about. Dickey.
Good night. Good night. I don't see no females. What is going on?
Gender prejudice.
Yeah.
We don't look at gender. We look at issues and ideas, and they're gender neutral.
Gender neutral.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do have Jeremy Spooner, who is
Yeah.
on the way to trans, not quite trans yet, but transcending.
I got your trans right here for you. We met your son the other day, Dickie. Nice young man, very nice young man.
Which one? Got about 20 of them, yeah.
The eldest one, the one with
Junior.
the dreadlocks, the eldest one, Dickie Bradley Jr.
Okay.
Yeah,
You know, we used to play basketball together.
Mom. Nice young man, yeah.
Okay, thanks. You know, take after Ipa. He's a gentleman.
Yeah, you know, worry so much about the ladies. But yeah, Dickie. Joe is giving us a hypnosis, if you will, of the government from 2008 to 1998 to 2008, and kind of like covering some of the things that went right and some that went wrong. Are you familiar with the new public management system that was implemented during that time?
Yeah, I have an idea.
And the borrowing and loaning that was occurring, that apparently wasn't done properly, admitted it by Joe. You got any input on it? And guys, you know, could jump in when they're ready, you know, any kind of questions or anything like that. Stop me and so on. I got to say, I'm just gonna keep the flow.
By sheer coincidence, I spent a portion of the Sunday on this document.
Draft estimates of revenue and expenditures.
Yeah, for the current year, 26-27.
Uh-huh.
And I had pointed out before, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that during the UDP administration, there had been a lot of tampering with how the budget is presented to the House of Representatives. Very important information started to go missing, and also the typesetting was extremely fine. Even me, in the quietness of my house, have to bend down and sometimes even use a little magnifying glass, because it's not printed nor is it intended for anybody to really read. And that is why we are a nation poorly informed and can't continue to live like this. That here we are, I guess what? The budget comes into effect in April. So whole of April, May, June, July, we're now in August. What we should be advocating for is that there should be a midterm review of what we have been spending and have we been in fact achieving what those monies are to be spent for.
You mentioned before you go on something about the under the SKBL and the UDP that some things were being improperly done. Was the current or was the opposition at that time falling down? Because I'd have thought that the PUP would have had a stronger position, stronger certainly than we have now, and could have had some things to say when they saw it happening. Why was nothing done or said?
It is the nature of opposition to fall down. They oppose for opposing sake. And so the very serious matters in the running of our young society is not given the kind of focus and interest that it deserves. So the budget is a document that is required by law because nobody can spend taxpayers' money and nobody can go out and collect taxes and taxpayers' money unless it is approved by the parliament. And so each year you have this big thick document which is taken to the parliament, and in our case in Belize from ever since, we carry out a debate on the so-called budget. But that debate consists of the government presenting the budget and each minister outlining what they consider to be the highlights in regards to their particular ministry and department. But at the end of the day, because the nature of party politics in Belize is emotional and personal, and the real issues never get the kind of frontal highlight that they deserve, even all of us right here tonight have not the slightest idea, well, how much money is given to the hospital to do what they need to do for the year. Nobody know. Nobody know. How much money do we spend on our army of, I think they have about 1,300. Nobody know.
But isn't there a line item? Isn't it listed in the budget when it's presented to the House?
But they don't tell you that. You see?
Well, isn't that what the media should do? Then those are the questions that they should be asking.
It's a kind of unfair for our media because they are caught up in the media cycle. They have a pressure each day to get a story into their studios, get it approved by their bosses, and then start to do editing and preparing it for the 6 o'clock news. And they are caught up in that cycle, and that is one of the reasons why we focus on a lot of things, because they are current, some of them are sensational, and that has become the appetite of the nation. But the real things like who they spend, how much per what, and do you get value for money, we never have that conversation. We never have. In fact, I will probably try to see if I could send to you an information out of the prison showing a half-naked man being strapped down on a metal. It looked like one of them, they used to have the bed where the spring then a metal, one metal there underneath of the mattress. Well, he's being strapped onto a bed when I have no mattress. And we can highlight each of the different areas where there is not satisfactory conduct of public affairs.
But Dickie, really, I highlight some of these specific incidents, but are they so widespread? Is it something that happens with such regularity that we really need to pay that much attention to it? I mean, any single incident like that, I understand, is of concern. But is it enough for us to stop the whole wheel and deal with that as opposed to try to fix everything at the same time?
Well, that's a very deep and serious question. But the running of a country from the official standpoint is done through the two of the big organs of state, the cabinet, which is where each minister has a portfolio, and the House of Representatives, which is the real more important part of the parliament because they have the say in the passing and amendment of laws. But a few days ago, and a story, I don't think I saw the whole thing, I probably saw the headline of the story. The story was that the man in charge of the forestry department, who himself has been publicly exposed by a citizen claiming that the citizen deposited money into his account. The citizen knows that he is the beneficial owner of a private company that deals in forestry products, logs, and so on. And the minister kind of conducted a little flaky review of the situation and made the decision that the head of the forestry department is to return back to his job as the chief forest officer because there was not enough information to further pursue the allegations that he's taking bribe to approve permits for logging. I give you the long story to tell you that I thought about it and I wonder if the Prime Minister would say, you know what, there'll be a moratorium on cutting logs and exporting logs and selling logs. And they review exactly what is the core functions of the Agriculture Department and the Ministry of Agriculture. And I'm saying that, gentlemen, because we have been following things year in, year out without haul back and take a hard look and ask some serious questions. Because, from I get into the public service, it was a different life and a different world back then. Seems so long.
What year was that?
That is the 70s.
All right. Now, see, then,
yeah.
let me, and I don't want to, please, I don't want to be rude here. But Joe was gonna review, and you obviously were there at the same time. So maybe you can add something to that. What I wanted to try to get to at this point is where the similarities were between what happened there and what is happening now. Because as we see it now, I was listening to Jules tonight, and he was suggesting that the UDP, the PUP government now is getting very unpopular. And he did show in that he doesn't think that he thinks that the UDP is even more unpopular. But are we seeing some similarities now with what transpired over that period, in particular post 2004, that led to the demise of the PUP? Is there anything we see that we can learn from that maybe avert the same type of ending for this government?
I'm going to answer you starting at the end of one of my favorite books. And I want to share with you all, as you are my brothers, that it is highly likely that I'm invited to do like a 2-part, 3-part series of the book, where I will introduce it to the listeners on CRIM and try to explain it from what is actually happening in the country right now. And that book, of course, is Animal Farm. It's only 98 pages, 94 pages. So it's easy to handle. And I don't propose to go on television and read out no 2-page or 3-page. I'm going to summarize. But at the end of Animal Farm, if we recall that It started out as a revolution that the animals were so badly treated by Farmer Jones and his assistants that they revolted and succeeded in chasing out Farmer Jones out of the farm. Then they did what was the next logical thing. They all came together and they wrote up a constitution, and they painted it at the back of the barn in big letters. And while all the animals can't read in the same way, why like most of us in Belize we don't read,
I don't know the Constitution.
and we can't know it. It was probably intended that we don't know it. And so, but there are those who you could call on them and they would go and read the Constitution. Now, I'm going to give two examples if I never did say it, and then I will tell you the ending, one portion of the ending of the book. Eventually, well, let me start with this part here, and bear with me. Shortly after the revolution, they observed that a lot of apples had fallen from the apple tree and were on the ground and needed to be picked up and stored. And the cows were mooing because they needed to be milked. But the pigs told the other animals, don't touch the apples, don't drink the milk. Milk and apples are brain food. And it is well known that pigs are the ones that use their brains and they need to have their brains well taken care of. So that is the politicians when they get in the office to tell you like they want to handle the money, left the money part with we and left this with we. So they start off like that. Now, after about 10 of the constitutional principles, one is that no animal shall sleep in a bed. Another one says that no animal shall drink alcohol. And a crucial important principle, which is like, this is like the PUP slogan, PUP all the way, que viva George Price. They had, all animals would sing that 2 legs bad, 4 legs good. Because the birds, they made a big fuss. We only got 2 legs. And I said, no, well, birds are given an exception. And plus, if you count there are 2 wings, then I like 4 legs almost. Now, one Saturday night, well, before that Saturday night, some of the animals pass and peep in at the window because the pigs then take over the mansion for the Farmer Jones. They pass and look in and they say, some animals cack off in a bed. So, and then they lunge off and say, but we sure that we have one rule, no animal shall sleep in bed. So they all gallop and go back at the farm and ask the one they could read the thing where it said about bed. And the animal read out and said, no animal shall sleep in bed. And when they look on a freshly painted part, it really reads, no animal shall sleep in beds with sheets. Somebody amend the Constitution.
Well, basically the same thing. I would hope that everybody has read that book, Dickie. And I'm sure, have you read it, Greg?
Yes.
Have you read Animal Farm?
Yes.
Have you read it, Spooner?
Yeah, in school when they was one
have
of
you
the
read it,
books.
Joe?
Yeah, I did.
And that's the whole.
Make I just finish this part.
Go ahead.
So one Saturday night, big nice ruckus they go on over the Farmer Jones' house. Nice, Sound like quarrel when they raise their vice. Sound like then they want to get violent and so the pig then gone wrong. And when they look, everybody got stout and rum in their hand and they drink and they go on like how drunken man go on. But they know enough in their head, no animal shall drink alcohol. So they rush down to the barn and one they could read there saying, read the thing about alcohol. So everybody read out the thing. No animal shall drink alcohol. And in a fresh paint to excess. So they amend the Constitution to say nobody. So, but the last part before I leave Animal Farm, which is how I would answer Joe, the last part is towards the last couple paragraphs in the book. the ruthless leader of the of Animal Farm, who had chased out the man with ideas and brains, they find fault with him and say he the sabotage and he the work with the humans and they run him out. He had a bright idea to build a windmill and use the power of the wind to take off the pressure off of the animals. Now let me also throw this in. They run him out and the poor windmill thing just left half started. Much later, because, and this is important, because as the book progresses, life has become harder for the animals. They're always styling. They never get enough to eat. The Napoleon who took over, Napoleon had taken away some small puppies and they turned out to be GSU and beat up the animals, they tear up their throat and so. So there's a reign of terror. Life is harder. People are working longer and they are worse off than when they were under the old regime. In any event, towards the end of the book, when there's a meeting between some investors, humans have come on the farm, and then they got discussion and thing and so. The animals looking through the window, sweating that something look a bit out of place in this setting. And they're playing cards and they talk up and laugh up like all of them are one, and deals are being made, the art of the deal and so on. But on second view, Napoleon, who is the leader of the political party in government on the farm, is standing on 2 foot. He and the humans, they're all standing up and discussing and talking. And so the animals, they get into their head. You can't tell one from the other. They are all the same. They're all the same. And so, before I try to answer Joe, let me just make this point here. That this is a very serious review of the society we in Belize are living. And so my answer to you and Joe for that question is, guess what? Why? Guess what? In my mind, my humble thought, the present PUP in government has become the UDP that came out of government. They do some good thing with the Blue Bond, with some of the free education, with a little bit of thing here and there, but all where it comes, there is no difference in how our country is being managed.
May I ask a pertinent question? Because, all right, normally they vote them out, get rid of them, they have to go. We hear it every single time. Is there any time we might get to the point where we'll say, you know what, let us fix this. Let us fix this farm, that the animals and everybody else get a fair shake of what is going on, instead of just to put black dog for monkey, for pardon the phrase. Yeah. Is there something we can do, and can we maybe inspire the people to do more? Because for the most part, it is us, the people who suffer, are the ones that are guilty of letting this happen. Am I not right?
I will add that probably we can't reform a political party. The political party has to reform itself. And so it would take what we're seeing in some instances where some ministers are in opposition to, for example, the buyout of Smart, and it would take real action on their part, similar to what Mr. Joe did when they had the Gang of Seven, where it internally reforms itself. It's hard for individual and to reform a political party, especially when they have that type of overwhelming majority that they have right now. They can do whatever they want, and they're doing that.
Well, let me stick up in. This question that G. Mike has asked is the question facing this nation right now. So let me give a quickly background, which what Joe had done when he was there, let me just make a point and then we could discuss what G. Mike is saying, because that has to be the only avenue available to us. We can't change UDP and we can't change PUP. They are what they are. It is the nature of politicians. 90 out of them are dishonest. They go into government to steal and rob and to get rich.
But do you think so? Don't you think some go in with good intention and just become corrupt when they realize? I mean, it no matter anyway. Because people seem to want that to happen.
But let me finish what I'm trying to say. I spent a lot of hours to read and reminisce and go over what is in this book here. And I want to double check the matter of how much money is provided to the Ministry of Health to buy medicine. Because there was 9 young little babies died in January this year. All their moms were told the same story. But when the babies started dying one after the other, the ministry put out a notice that that is not what caused the death. It's not a shortage of platelets. It wasn't that, but it was. And the people inside told me, because we are going to sue, that they did not have enough. If you're sick right now and you need blood, you can't get blood from the hospital. But let me hurry highlight this for you all, gentlemen, for my personal opinion. Now, the British left behind a small public service because we were a small little country. And they used the same system that they used in India, in several big countries in Africa, in all the English-speaking Caribbean, in Canada, and of course back home where they were. It's the British that make up a lot of things that began to become accepted in countries as they grew and developed. All right, so in Belize you had a small cadre, I think people say cadre. You have a small group of public officers. And the hierarchy of the public officers, very quickly, gentlemen, is roughly like this. You go in as a clerk. Actually, you start, I think, assistant clerk. You take exams, you become a second-class clerk. You take more exams, you become a first-class clerk. And then you used to go in three limbs, but you go 2 now. Who want to be administrative officers and work up to be higher ranks, they go in that direction. Who love accounting and figures and ledgers and so, they become accountants, finance officer grade 1, finance officer grade 2, and then you have the technical people like say forestry, customs, immigration, and so on. Now the very important thing about the public service, anywhere it is under the British system, the politicians not to handle money. The politicians sit in cabinet and approve policy and approve the need to draft legislation, but they can't go back to their ministry and department and say, I see them buy the paper on the street side, I want to take my $75,000 and build a basketball court. So and so that my contractor send $75,000 to one. I want to make sure they get a basket. Work like that.
It shouldn't work like that.
You're not supposed to work like that.
No, it don't work like that.
That's right.
Only Parliament can approve spending money. If Parliament didn't approve the spending money, they can't take the money and go build a basketball court.
So all the money where they spend, how that they happen?
Well, that's what I'm leading up to, my brother in Christ. So that system, gentlemen, is the career public officers who are coming up through the service, know the ins and outs of their departments and other departments, because they're also transferable. Nobody not turn rock stone in one department. You work here, you spend 3-4 years, you work, you do over. This is the important point now. As you go up and take on more responsibility and become more married to your job, one day you can become a permanent secretary. Now, under the law that passed the budget every year and all the rules and regulations that Joe is familiar with, The permanent secretary by law, in this very document, he is personally and pecuniarily responsible for the monies in his ministry. The permanent secretary. The Constitution, I believe, says the minister has general administration over a ministry. No. So, 2026, 25, 24, 23, the politicians, they make policies. They see that it is carried out. Collectively, as cabinet, they're all responsible. You can't say, boy, the minister Home Affairs, him they buy rotten boots, him buy some play gun where when you shoot 5, 6 bullets out there, the gun so hot you have to let it go. He they eat jumbo shrimps and all that. You can't blame him. All are only responsible under the constitution of the country. They use the word you're collectively responsible. So now let me quickly put this in. The permanent secretary can only spend the money that's approved by the nation's parliament for the purpose for which it was approved for. In the public service, the permanent secretary is the general manager of his ministry. He has accountants and finance officers. He has administrative officers and clerks who do other things. In the system right now, they switch from the old-time system where you write out and voucher by hand or type it out. Now, every ministry and department, the finance officer has a code and they send instructions to the treasury and the treasury make out the check and transfer the money to wherever and whoever. Guess what happened? Only 2 people got a code. The finance officer and the chief executive officer, who used to be called permanent secretary. Along comes a scandal. Only 2 people got a code for spend the money, and only they could authorize treasury make a check for $100,000 to Woods and Construction Company or whatever. The chief executive officers in each of the ministry are politically appointed persons who know nothing about the public service, who don't care about the public service. They and their minister, the ass and chamber pot, they believe and they know that they're there to facilitate the minister in his political works.
Dickie, with all due respect, I don't want you to grab the mic and take it and hold it so long. Because it's not fair. Joe was the guest of the show, and I understand that a lot of what you're saying makes a lot of sense. But it sounds to me like the regular post-mortem. That's looking at all that is being done, but giving us no solutions as to how we will remedy this
that's
problem.
Where we're going. That's where we're going.
Yeah, but you're taking too long. You have to sum it up for me, though.
You don't know about the public service. That's why I'm trying
to correct. But I can't learn it all in one night, Dickie.
Yeah, but no, I've given you what I want to give you. Now let me
say, okay.
None of the chief executive officers in our public service system take out 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon and another one at evening to look at the smart stream to see how much authority is being sent to spend money, how much money to who. They're not interested in that. So let us know, this is the solution part. Let us know, start with this. When I watch the news and I see how the reporting is going, the Constitution of Belize lists down a thing called the Code of Conduct. The Constitution requires ministers, permanent secretaries, finance officers, all public officers to abide by a code of conduct. That is the 10 commandments for the public service. Don't use your position for personal gain. Don't bring your position or the public service into disrepute. Don't do this, don't do that. All those things that are being reported on the nightly news about what is happening are breaches of the code of conduct. The second thing, my brothers, The Constitution of Belize is very, very lacking and weak in the area of accountability and transparency. So now, if I could bring everything together, if I could try, when the PUP then they abuse up their authority, abuse up their position, and do all kind of wrong thing and so on, the same thing happen when you're tired of them and you bring in a next set. What we want, what we need is to strengthen the procedure so that it is airtight when it comes to spending public monies and to be accountable and for everything to be transparent. We, the citizens, must start to find ways how, when something pop up, I say, how the hell that could have happened? We use that as a way to say that that can't happen again. People out there, you know what they're crying for? They want to see a minister or two go to prison. But that won't change the system we have to put in place. Everybody should be able, me and you too, to say on the computer, let me go to the Ministry of Health. How much money they don't spend for the month? Where they spend it on? That's the fucking transparency. That is accountability. That's
Well,
we.
with smart stream, it should be easy. But I'll tell you what, don't you think that a minister or two going to jail might serve as a deterrent from this not happening again if they realize, boy, this might happen to me? They know nothing's going to happen to them. So what are you going to do? Now, Joe, I want to hear from Joe a little bit because you're saying the Constitution is weak. You're saying the Constitution needs to be reformed, and there was a lot of money spent on an exercise to reform the Constitution. Millions of dollars. Where is that, and where are we with that exercise? Again, we're sitting down being taken for fools, but some of us like it. Because when you come up with this, there are always those, the sycophants, the cronies, who will find everything to dissuade us from the solutions we're trying to seek, and to convince us that, you know what, you're not all that bad, you know. The pigs aren't that bad to us, you know. So, Joe, why is the Constitution that terrible as Dickie is telling us? Or as you have been saying that you don't see much wrong with the Constitution, it's only implementation that's wrong, that's missing.
I can say this, and I will defend it, and I can bring evidence. And if I have been allowed to go on, I may try to end it by showing you where the governments, the 8 governments that we have had, are 9 since independence, 1981, which was when the Constitution was in fact brought into play. Nothing that had happened, nothing that went wrong, had nothing to do with the Constitution of this country. Evidently, there are improvements that could be done, but you can't improve our Constitution and the mindset remains the same. The politicians continue to behave the same, the citizens continue to behave the same. What you want to change? What I wanted to bring out, and I was about to close what I wanted to do the presentation. I led you from what was a public sector driven expansionary policy, one of the best policies of any government since independence.
Jeremy, kindly mute your mic for me, Jeremy, because your dogs.
My dogs. My dogs only bark.
Now your dog, Dickie. Somebody dog making a lot of noise in the background.
Yeah, they don't dog down.
All right. Mute that mic for me while Joe talk now, please. And then
so I highlighted to you some great achievement in terms of public sector reform, new public management. I highlight to you those things, and then I was about to come down now to the issue that those things failed. And I told you why I thought they failed. It had nothing to do with the Constitution. It had nothing to do with the system. I think everything was in place to make sure that those things could have worked. Now, how did we correct it? After we reached the point where we have to meet a bullet payment of 300 million, and we budget only 1 billion, the DFC collapsed. The Social Security was under threat. The public sector was almost bankrupt. No. What happened? Because there were politicians, ministers of government, of a cabinet, that decided that they will put an end to it. And the truth about it, they did put an end to it. And that are the lessons to be learned. In other words, when we finish with carrying out the public sector, and when we finish with restructuring the debt, when we finish with the fiscal consolidation programs, by that time, in 3-4 years after 2007 coming into 2008, every financial institution came back to Belize, which never wanted to come back. Every one of them gave a very good report on the financial performance. ECLA, the Economic Commission for Latin America, said that we weathered the storm the best. No.
But the writing was on the wall.
Right. Things went bad. The lessons to be learned. And I'm come along to tell you now why the Constitution is not the problem. The lessons to be learned, gentlemen. Don't care how good systems you put in place. Those internal controls that we have today, which handed over to us from the British, are grounded in international standards of internal controls, which we as auditors are trained to do. So to me, nothing wrong with the internal controls, nothing wrong with the systems. We can improve, and then the problem remains with the human behavior.
But is it put in terms that the regular Joe can understand? And that's the question. I mean, can we look at the Constitution and understand what needs to be done for this to work properly, or is it convoluted?
But Joe,
yeah, go ahead, Dickie. Answer.
My understanding of what I have read, and can I just throw this out, gentlemen? There is a document that is used in Britain. It's called a cabinet manual, a manual for the cabinet. I've read. I had read the previous one, but they have revised a new one. And by the way, we need to pay attention to this man who has become Prime Minister of Britain, because when they talk, there's some serious changes in the look for breed. But Joe, let me say why I have reservations about what you're saying. First, yes, you are correct. It is true that if you have bad people there, okay, where good you put in, they will find a way around it. That is why transparency and accountability is, in fact, the key factor. When they spend money, Joe, we can look and see how much they spend. Who they spend it on, we can look and see. So the British put in their system on this principle, gentlemen, that all those territories that His Majesty has conquered and the Lord has given him dominion over them, and so then people in Nigeria and in Ghana and in Uganda and Jamaica, they want thief the king money. They want thief the king's resources, but
I want to, if you allow me to come in at this stage,
Sure.
I can say this for certainty. When it comes to internal controls for public sector and private sector, they are all under international standards.
that means nothing.
That is a fact. I'm telling you. And
Yeah,
that's
but
no, let me finish. I'm telling you facts.
yeah.
All the internal controls we set up internal controls that we are training. The British follow the same internal controls like every other countries do, based on international standards of internal. I know what are the purpose of the internal controls. Every internal controls begin on the assumption that managers will be honest. But it also, hold on. I am telling you, Dickie, that's what grounded in.
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
Yes, man. These are the principles that govern internal controls internationally. The assumption is that they are honest. Now, that assumption is followed by the internal controls that in the event they are not honest, you can pick it up very timely and you can pick it up accurately. That is what it is.
So why does it not work?
I'm going to finish right now. You know why you have to be so? You cannot straitjacket management. If you're straitjacket management, they cannot manage. So you have to assume that
whoa. But you open the door for some serious, the same kind of corruption we're having, Joe.
Oh,
I mean, straitjacket. You could at least hold them accountable. That's not the same thing.
No. You missed the point. I'm telling you, you're missing it. I am saying to you, these are internationally accepted.
No, but what do you mean by straitjacketing?
G. Mike, when you are doing administration and you are doing management, you are doing two different things. Now, you have the CEO for your company, right? You own the company. You are the shareholders. You are.
Right, right.
And you have the CEO at the top. Now, what you will do with the CEO, you never straight jacket managers. Generally, you don't. Straight jacket mean you want them to do exactly this and that. That's not what you do. But what you do, you must give them, they can't have to be proactive. If you're straight jacket, then they become passive. You don't want passivity, you want proactivity. No. What you do, you put in place the internal control that if they stop, you pick them up. Then you'll deal with it quickly. That is it. That's
But then,
internal
Joe,
standard.
yeah,
That is standard for all internal controls in the world.
But Joe,
All right. Yeah.
Joe and G Mike, let me just give one or two examples to show you why the British did not take, by the way, the British never take the approach that the manager was honest, that the administrator was, that the governor was honest. The British put in place on the basis that human nature does not change. If somebody wants to thief, they will thief. The thing is that if they do, they're going to be caught. And they must know that. And we must also know. So let me give you some example, Joe. In your time and my time, when the driver comes and say, I will need 2 tires for the front of the vehicle because then we're out and so, the finance officer is going to go outside and look on the 2 tires for the vehicle and will go back in and write to the Ministry of Finance and confirm that that is so. Somebody from Audit and Accountant General will come and see for themselves, and after that, our invoice order comes down and then get the 2 tires, and then you guess what they do? They require that you put the 2 old tires for when they come audit, and that one get right off. What happens now? What happens now? They call up whoever, remember our political person that is CEO, boss, we need some tire and whatnot. Call the finance officer, get a tire for them. G Mike Reed, I'm telling you what actually happened. They place an order for 4 tires. That is sold. The person who buy it not even have to come to the department to pick it up. They go to the store and go pick up 4 new tires when I go up on the government vehicle. I have gone to court last year. Raccoon Street Police Station. They got drums and drums of petrol. So that one quick thing you need to use the vehicle and could full up right there and go. When time to replace the drum of petrol and they go to the gas station with the order for the gas, then give the man who the pumping the gas one slight money and he sign and the government they pay for one full drum of gasoline where they no get. And those are just my, let me give one other one.
But you know, I don't think we need, quite frankly, I would prefer not to hear them for the reason we know that they happen.
But Joe, it is happening.
That's the issue I wanted to talk about tonight, and I hope we could get back to it.
Okay. But
I don't want to hear about the transgressions because we know them are happening. All I am saying to you, Dickie, the world had gone towards what we call business principles for public sector. And that was what happened in the 70s and 80s, what they call the new public management. Prior to that, the traditional bureaucracy was very input and output. They were very passive. No, what happened? They come to realize, and that happened because of what the chaos, the global chaos we had in the early 60s, 70s, 80s. Global. The world was in problem. Economic chaos, tax revolts, national debts. Then they realized, and these were theorists and practitioners. Among them, no doubt, the guy Chris something from the UK was very prominent. And they realized that, you know something, we got to move away from this traditional bureaucracy of input-output. And we need to bring in principles. This is what happened. I did tell you what happened. I did this, Nicky.
Did it work? Did it work, Joe?
Yes, it is working. It does.
It works. So where's the problem? We don't have no problem.
Joe.
No, hold on. The system itself is not the problem. I am saying to you, gentlemen, that the problem is not because we move from the input-output to results-oriented. Now, when you go to results-oriented government, evidently you change systems, you move from cash basis, you can't measure performance with cash basis, you have to go to accrual. The World Bank is giving Belize $3 million right now to transition to accrual basis. I personally headed it for this government to prepare it, to show how they could transition. The World Bank accepted it and will finance it. Now, I want to say this to you all. If you do not understand what it is, what they call the new way of managing public sector, we will never be able to get over. We'll never agree. The point I am making, gentlemen, is that it's the internal controls that are not being complied with. That is the failure.
The controls are effective? The existing controls are effective?
Okay, when you say something, let me show you the principles if you don't remember them. Economy, efficiency, effectiveness, and equity. Those are the 4 principles that govern public sector. Now, you are asking me if they are effective. No, if they are effective in the sense that if they are applied, they could be effective, but they might not be efficient. So what you need to do, you don't want them just effective, because when they're effective, that's when they could abuse the money. You want them to be efficient, and they don't want equity in it, and you want it to be economical. All I am saying to you, gentlemen, is that these things are there, and we have not had any problem. Nothing happened in this country. No corruption was because of a constitution that is weak. No corruption because the internal controls are not proper. The corruption came because of the collusion between public officers and politicians.
Yes, because the system is weak.
What I'm saying to you, why is it I entered the public service in 1961? We had to have 2 years of probation, 2 years. We had to pass the GO exams before we get made permanent. Now, I can guarantee any one of you this. In that period, from 1961 to 1981, when I left, that period up to 64, when we got self-government, the British retained control over the public sector, foreign affairs, and defense. And we never had those problems to this extent, because the British, to some extent, they have been here, but I must say too, our very politicians at the time were not that type of politicians like today. They were not corrupt politicians. They were hardworking politicians. And I worked with them for 20 years. And I'm saying to you, gentlemen, that nothing had to do with no British and all of this nonsense that they talk about. It's simple that we allowed our children and whosoever we are to put aside the simple things of honesty, integrity, respect for elders, respect for law. Those were the things that were supported. So what happened to we today? The corruption is widespread from the politicians to the public officers and the citizens. The voters are corrupt themselves.
Immorality.
This is what we are discussing. This is what we discuss. You need to put in
I am saying to you, no, let's come down. No, let's come down. The G7 is an example, and we can learn from it. If some of us have the courage, and I'm saying this, I got a call from a minister on Thursday. The minister called me because I was trying to reach 3 of them, and I can tell you exactly. The problem in Placentia with the sargassum should have been already addressed. Now, I want to show you how the bureaucracy is failing. They know, they have already done this study. They know what needs to be done. They need the financing. The minister that called me, he called me to tell me how pissed off he feels. And I'm telling you, he said that he may not even be running again. Why? It's simply because he believed that the money could be had to do what needs to be done, because, unfortunately, we get 48% of our GDP from the tourism. So this had nothing to do with the Constitution. It has nothing to do with the internal controls. It has nothing to do with the Finance and the Reform Act. It has nothing to do with standing orders and store orders. It's the failure to comply with them.
Let me ask a question.
Right now, the collusion now is between the public officers along with the politicians.
All right, let me ask a question. I'm bringing it up to the current state of affairs here now, with this current BTL acquiring smart fiasco. What were the senators following the suit of the G7 when they walked out, and was that what is necessary for us to fix this thing, or is it not going far enough? Or was it not necessarily at all? Is that the route we go? But either Deke or Joe will answer that.
Well, it was more symbolic than substantive. It wasn't G7 which was at the heart of the problem. But I want to show this out, and I don't want us to get distracted by it. The Prime Minister told me that a certain lad was behind the G7. They go meet up the Courtney place,
Whoa.
and that was a whole attempt to get revenge against the PUP because
Oh.
Said Musa cut the monopoly of BTL.
Oh.
We'll get to
Oh.
that. We'll get to that another day because
I will
Ashcroft is
tell you
still
this,
around.
Nicky. Look,
No,
I can
no.
tell you this.
Well,
That's
yeah.
that's a total lie.
Well, we
That's
can
a
deal
lie.
to that. We'll deal with that
It's a
another
lie.
time.
You know, you
We'll
bring the
deal with that.
evidence to me, and then I will agree with you. I
Ah.
can tell you,
Me and you going aside. Me
Courtney
and you
was
going
there.
aside. Me and you going
No,
aside. No.
because those kind of things is what I think is not good for us. To suggest
Yeah.
We
that Ashcroft or whoever it is was
Yeah.
behind, that is not true. The reason why I can tell you it is not true, I didn't go to see the Prime Minister with Yvonne Courtney, Godfrey Smith. I didn't go to see him with Marcus Smart. None of them. I went to see the Prime Minister myself.
yeah,
And
but that's
then
not
I
what to do what I say.
no,
I'm
he has
telling
to do.
you. I'm
No,
saying to
because
you.
you said something just now where the Prime Minister told you. And I
But
would want to question him on that. I would.
yeah,
Which one of the Prime
you
Minister?
could do that. But Joe,
No, which
listen,
one of the Prime Minister tell you that, Dickie?
Joe,
Uh,
Joe, Joe, hold on, man, you get emotional.
Of course, because you're
You
talking about
could go up. You could go approach the Prime Minister and you could tell him, boy, you know, I'm not happy with you know, and I want to link up with them, boy. So I got nothing to do with whether Ashcroft put together G7.
he did not. I'm telling you, he did not. Dickie. I was a.
You
Dickie, I
don't
was
know, man. You don't know.
Dickie.
You don't know. Then I am on man. You think I'm on going? Anyhow, we're not going there.
No, I think we should. No, make we go there. I think we should.
No,
Because
make we-
but you can't settle that now. We don't even get a time for it.
but the G7,
We are bring
I
on
was to
side.
speak
We are bring
about.
on side for the show. We are bring on side.
Why, I would love to do that.
Yes.
You want I
Let
tell you what
me-
he told me
let
to?
me-
You want I tell you what he told me? And I
No,
could
man.
say
No, make we go there, man.
Greg,
Listen,
Greg,
I-
Greg, you're having a wonderful time, aren't you?
Yeah,
yeah,
make we
yeah.
listen.
because you know,
What
I know that
Joe-
kind of thing.
What
I
Joe
don't know
is
when they
saying.
bring when they introduce some kind of thing. I know it's not true. I know they will.
But Joe, you know the last show you got defensive when I suggested that there might have been ulterior motives at play, and I don't know. Dickie is now suggesting that there were ulterior motives at play. You're saying for you there wasn't. He's saying that maybe you weren't privy to what was going on with those other 6 guys who were standing behind you on the same principle, but taking a different vehicle.
All right, good, Mr. Chairman. Let me say this to you.
Make we not go there, man. Next
No,
time.
got it. You know why?
Yeah, but make it brief.
Now, back I finish. If you say the G7, it was Jules Vasquez that gave it the name the G7. I didn't. I was the one that went to see the Prime Minister, and I repeat it again, who then called in the Minister of Finance. And then he asked me, why am I telling the Prime? And I told him, because you are not telling him. It was there that he asked me then, what should we do? And I told him we should go to restructure the debt and carry out a fiscal consolidation. And I left that meeting. Then when I found out that it seems that they're not going that way, I was going to resign and I was going to take in my resignation.
All right, make we come back to the
But let me
government.
tell you how it gone. Because if you might allow me to finish what I came to do, I want to give you the story of the G7 so that we stop these that are nonsense for what we hear. But I'm not getting a chance.
You don't know where to go on back of your back, Joe.
Okay,
Listen, we are gonna show about that.
I was to talk about the G7, but here again,
Make
you
we,
take over the G7.
make we try to get the scene. You first of all, the premise that we can apply the same system of controls to the public sector that is applied by the private sector is not acceptable in the modern world that we are in. The purpose of the public sector is entirely different from the purpose of the private sector. The government have to have police, fire service, build the roads, govern the money for flood and hurricane. Private sector no interested in anything there. In the university, make I develop my point and I want to shut up. In the University of the West Indies, there is a faculty for government and public administration to teach and train and open the eyes of public administrators, because they have an entirely different function. You are the permanent secretary for the Ministry of Health. You are to see that we are delivering affordable health care to the members of the public. Private sector no give a F about that. They want sell you the medicine, sell you the injection, keep you in the hospital longer, charge you 4,000 a night and so on. So two different functions for two different objectives. The government is not there to make profit and to get rich. The government is there to deliver services. They can only do so by getting revenue from customs and from income tax and sales tax, and that money is limited, so the ability to be able to deliver services are limited. Now, let me jump from that and make a point
No,
that...
but could you allow me something? Could you allow me something, since I was to be the guest? Just allow me this.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. The public sector is welfare driven. It is. It's a welfare driven. The private sector is driven by profit. No, the traditional bureaucracy, because it was supposed to be public sector driven, welfare driven, and the principle of solidarity, that is the public sector. The principle of solidarity is that those who have must help those who don't. And that is why you have a consolidated fund, that all the taxes goes into that fund. Now, even if I didn't pay a penny, I have the right to use the park, I have the right to use the street. That's the welfare-driven public sector. Now, because in the past, they were not able to measure performance of the public sector, which we were able to do many, many thousands of years or hundreds of years because of the accounting system. The accounting system allows us to measure the performance of profit-driven private sectors. What's happening in the NPM through the theorists and practitioners? They develop methods of how to measure performance in the public sector. That is why they shifted, because the public sector was becoming so inefficient. It could not continue to meet the demands of the people because they were not able to measure the performance of it. Now, under the new public management, and if you go to any audit over the train, especially they have a group special for the public sector. And how do you evaluate performance? You cannot continue with the cash basis. So we can measure performance, we can measure results, what we couldn't do before. We can do that now. We can measure results at the health system.
We
can measure results at the fire department. We can measure results at the education department. Those things we were not able to do, but we can do it now.
But Joe, measuring results is not the problem, nor is it the issue. The problem we have, and it's compounded, and I will tell you why. The problem we have, there is no overseer. There is nobody who comes behind and let me see how much payments have come out of the smart stream, to who it goes.
That's not true, Dickie. That is not true. That is not true.
Man, I am telling you, man. I'm telling
you, it's not true, Dickie. I have been there for 20 years. I am telling you that,
Joe,
Dickie, under the Constitution is telling you that national accounts need to be ready and audited and tabled by the end of September.
What that mean?
It means that they need to be accountable for the consolidated from all the money they spend.
The poor audit lady, they said publicly that you can't get the first document, then you can't even get the invoice to show.
The point I want to make to you is that what you are doing, you are trying to show the things that are happening as if though that is not the system. The Auditor General, I had a meeting with the Auditor General myself, and she admitted that the problem is simple, that they are not doing what they're supposed to do.
Compliance.
All of those accounts, their accounts. Let's finish. All their accounts. That is where the permanent secretary may come in.
Gentlemen,
they must deliver by the end of the third quarter.
But all right, Joe, hold on. Dickie, you understand?
To the treasurer.
To
the accountant general, and then it goes to the auditor general, and by the end of September.
But just like you said, that Dickie, we don't need to outline the whole system. See, but Dickie, do you understand what Joe is saying? That in fact, the system, if allowed to work, and if there's compliance, it would work and prevent all that is happening. You're suggesting that it has to be tweaked, and that it doesn't have enough oversight and enough the
You have
algorithm
none.
is not right for it to happen.
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. 2
Well, you
weeks
give an
ago.
example of what it happened or why
No,
it's
I'm going to
not
tell you
happening.
why. I'm trying to tell you
Okay,
why.
okay, let's get to
Can
Let
you
why.
me
do
give you this
something? Can we
example.
agree
Hold
on
on, Joe.
something? No, can
Hold
we
on,
agree
Joe.
on something? Can you tell me the way it should be and then tell me the way it is happening? That's what I want to
That
hear.
can take long, man. Make we say
No,
where
no,
they
no,
go
no.
on.
You need to know the way it should be,
Let
and
me
then
give
we
you
know
an
why they do it.
Joe.
Hold
Let
on,
me
we don't
give
got
you an
enough time.
example,
Yeah, yeah.
gentlemen. The Prime Minister, who is the Minister of Finance, 2 weeks or so ago announced publicly, oh, they want to check this vote. They think where they happen in Home Affairs and so on. So, all right, guess what? We're going to get the auditor general and the staff to go into such a ministry when UDP made in and 15 years ago, and we want to find out when they go on in there. Guess what, my brother? Guess what? The Prime Minister knows that there has been no audit for the UDP 15 years ago. You know,
There
do
was no
nothing.
audit for none of them, Dickie.
Hold on. I make a point. The minister
We
who
know
is
that.
Joe, man, give me a little chance.
Go ahead, go ahead.
The minister who is responsible for finance, the
Yes.
head honcho, the prime minister, sit in office from November 2020 and did not require or request an audit for when Home Affairs made it under the UDP. Gentlemen, the audit department has not gone and audited these places for the past 15 years. No, I have a duty to tell all of you this. When Joe and I were in the public service in different areas and fields and so, the budget where they made handle them days, and he is right to a different caliber and character of men and women in the then public service. But my brothers, we are handling $1,600,000,000 for which the quantity of paperwork, the multitude of payments every day. You say you talk to people, I talk to the accountant general. I talk to the present assistant accountant general. I talk to the accountant general who was in my time, Beatrice Roberto. I speak to the finance officers then who many of them get a job when I was permanent secretary in the Ministry of the Public Service. They are readily admitting, oh, and by the way, let me tell you, I sat in a meeting with the Minister of Finance and Prime Minister and the Deputy Financial Secretary, and she agreed with me against PM that CEO thing then not work for the public service. Right in the office. And I
think we all know that though. But how can we? What can we do? What can we do? What should we do?
What we can do, G. Mike and my brothers, is put in place every turn you turn. We have to put in place overseers, accounting procedures, and accountability. Because what I'm saying to you is every day people within the accountant general department, they are so busy trying to get all these things that people call and wait so long for my payment that every day they don't have time to catch them breath. Nobody comes behind and says, how you make another payment for Ministry of Home Affairs? You don't got 21 payments already. Nobody don't study that.
It's under 10,000.
It's $1 billion plus 600 million more.
All of them under 10,000.
Can we agree on something here then? It's 1.9 billion is the budget, no?
That's
1.9.
correct. It's 1.943.
Right.
9.943. Shit.
Right. 1.943 is correct. So, what I'm saying to you, the Constitution give the minister direction and control over all the departments under a portfolio. Therefore, if you give it to them, who is responsible for these not complying with these laws and all of these internal controls and the accounts so they could be audited? Is it not the minister responsible? Is it not?
Responsible to who? To who?
I'm saying the minister. If the minister, if the Constitution, he has a collective responsibility. That's the Constitution. What do you mean to who? To the people.
Which people?
The citizens of this country.
The people that we don't know the Constitution and we don't know they're not the budget.
That's why I'm saying to you that the Constitution make him such, but the Constitution gone further.
But
They gave the Auditor General the authority to go through what they call a compliance audit.
we keep on
15
to
years.
dissect the problem, man. We keep on to put this thing up there and look on it and all that. So can we start by suggesting maybe that we remove the CEO? Can we remove and go back to the permanent secretary? Can we do that to start? And because obviously that is not working, and that's a big part of the problem, because
It
they
is-
answer to the
part-
politician and
it
give
is-
the politician access to the purse.
It is part of the issue, but we can't immediately go back because there need to be a training in the public
Transition.
service, because we have
Transition.
hollowed out that system of.
But let's
apprenticeship
begin. Let's
to training.
begin.
That's correct.
Let's
We need
begin.
to start. We need to
Mr.
start.
Chairman, did you see the manifesto for the PUP for the previous election? Did you see it?
I
There was a-
recall, I
there was
don't
a
remember what it
commitment
said,
in the
but was
manifesto. There was
that a
a
part of it?
Yeah, there was a commitment in the manifesto to bring back the permanent secretary, and I
Well,
was
let us call him to that then. Let us. This time what we should have done. And by the way, we run out of time. But I saw Jules on his interview with this BTL acquiring smart fiasco, and we needed to spend some time on this, and we haven't. But he was suggesting that people are saying, he said, and these are his exact words, people are saying that Tracy did not go far enough and she carried 20 men with pint bottle for broke up the window there and thing. Is that instigating violence, and is that the way we should be going?
It is
Yes or no?
instigating. It is instigating violence, and it's not the way we should be going at this stage.
So I think we have to look on it and then maybe
I'll
hold him to account.
I'll tell you something. Violence has its place in civil disorder.
I would imagine, but are we at that point?
No, I don't think we're at that point.
Because when you get there, you create some whole lot of problems that you might not want to deal with.
Violence has its place in civil disobedience legally.
Yeah.
It does. Of course it does.
You can
Yeah.
go there and commit violence.
Well, no, but it will happen.
No place. I could go and begin to block up vehicles. I could go
I
and pick
didn't
up.
say that. I didn't say that. I said
How-
violence has its place in civil disorder.
Right? What kind of violence? Explain to
How
me.
you think Mandela and the ANC then get to chase out the racist apartheid crowd? What you think they got to listen? Mandela was in jail 27 years.
Yeah, but
They
the
go
ANC
to him. They go to
the
him
ANC
and tell
was
him.
not- Yeah, but the ANC was
How
not
do you
defending
think? How do you think America?
What the ANC was under Gong revolution and
won their
everything.
freedom. You think it's
ANC
Martin
was
Luther King
violent.
that gave it
They
to them?
were violent.
But yeah, you know what? They were violent, yes, but
Yeah, it was not civil disobedience.
Violence.
Violence
No,
has
I'm
its
saying-
place. Violence
Martin
has
Luther
its
King-
place.
Martin Luther King was passive,
He
Well,
was
he
passive,
renewed
but
them.
he wasn't the reason that the government.
and the rest
stepped
were
in.
violent. So there was
It
some that
it
were
was
violent,
the
and there
constant
was
threat
some that
of
was.
violence and the violence that went on that caused
Gen-
them.
Gentlemen,
They
all
were
right,
violent.
yeah. That part, all right. We
Yeah,
could talk about that some other time. But at the end of the day, where we are now, because the whole the acquisition of Smart, $80 million, is it value for money, and is it worth it? Is the equipment even current? I mean, what's going to happen at the end
They
of the day
haven't
when
given
that
us a
goes to
disclosure of it. They haven't given us if it.
So
if it
how
was
can they
worth it,
just do
they
it?
would
Because
have
they brought it
definitely
up, there was an
presented it.
uproar. They put it on the back shelf. Now they bring it up and push it in our face. What are we gonna do about it? What should we do?
What I think we should do about it is exactly what I think some of these social partners are about to do and declare they will do. One, that is a state-owned enterprise owned by the people. Okay? Now, if it is a state-owned enterprise, and you hear what Minister Fonseca said, and others, it has not even come to the cabinet yet. So
Let me read this, Joe, and then you continue. Mr. Kobe possesses a considerable depth of knowledge, which is commendable. However, it is imperative to shift focus away from such attributes at this moment. It is crucial to eradicate corruption by addressing the influence of demagoguery and ineffective leadership perpetuated by the dishonest politicians of both the People's United Party and the United Democratic Party. The actions of these parties have primarily resulted in the ongoing exploitation of the populace, which, etc., etc.
I fully agree with
That's
him.
true.
It is crucial
That's
to
true.
eradicate corruption.
Yeah,
I agree with him
and
100%.
Dickie, because again, Dickie, you are making the point. that the animal farm thing that just the pigs taking over from the humans.
But we are just discussing, Mr. Chairman, how we can do it. I am
No.
saying to you that this is a state-owned enterprise. The cabinet itself have admitted that the matter has not yet come to them to decide. So who is it? Who had the authority to say that they are going to buy? That is the question. Because
But the PUC has to approve it, obviously, and has not yet. But the PUC, of course, is appointed by the Prime Minister and the government.
Right.
In
All of them are appointed by
I'm saying, Prime Minister,
it's crazy.
Who is saying in the cabinet? The gentleman is right. The cabinet cannot, the BTL is owned by the people. The board of directors cannot sell BTL or buy nothing. Like they can't buy it without the cabinet approval.
Guys, we're out of time. You know what I think? We never should have split anyway. And I understand when they say, oh, you know what? The Constitution prohibits a monopoly. But we have the light company and the water company are monopolies. They're essential services. This communication now can be termed as an essential service. So what we need oversight. Maybe the PUC should be doing what they should be doing, and maybe there's another process to appoint them where there wouldn't be such flunkies.
That's why I think, Mr. Chairman, I think the issue is not whether it's a monopoly or not. The issue that it is a state-owned enterprise owned by the people.
All right.
No cabinet should have the right to just go and decide that they will buy the other one.
But they split it to start with, but they shouldn't have had the power then to split it.
It's a legal fiction to perpetuate the lie, the political and economic lie, that the people own BTL, that the people own the dam, that the people own BEL, which is millions in a whole, that the people own WASA. We don't got no effing say in anything. We don't appoint no board. Hold on. We don't appoint no board. We are not consulted when they decide who will be the chairman of the board. Nobody know when they do when they go to the meeting from time to time. We don't have any say in anything.
Who owns BTL? Who owns it? Who are the majority shareholder?
The government, they got the money.
Oh, so the government owns it, and not the people.
All right, how then they buy shares of BTL? How? You think they could just get up and say we want to buy smart? You really believe that fiction there?
What?
You know, that is being driven by the sellers. You think that Mr. Weatherman, the chairman, then he just get up and decide, boy, I want good things to buy that? That is government.
That is it. BTL, the majority shares are held by the government. Evidently that the government will hold it for the people.
Whose money will be spent? Who will put up like 80 million?
They said that they could handle it from their money where they got.
BTL who BTL? But if BTL is the government, then that's also the people's money, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's like you the wrong on black table on blackjack table, and you to put your hand in on my money for set and bet. We're not got nothing to do with. You to roll the dice with my money. You don't want to lose your own money, but you use my money. That don't make no sense.
If anybody believe that the people own WASA and BEL and Fortis Dam and anything there, they really need to wake up. Yeah? They have no say. They have no say.
They want the bridge too, because we're celebrating, right?
If I could say something, for
I believe
me,
the people owns it. I believe the people owns it, but you're right. They do not have any control over it because the way the boards are structured through the government appointment of these individuals that sit on the board does not represent the rights and the values of the people. That's what
you have to wrap it up. Spooner.
Yeah, at the end of the day, for me, is if this is a good investment for BTL, or are we just bailing out a company that is failing? So that's what my
That's a good question. And we have to get that answer. Gentlemen, we're out of time. Dickie, thanks for stopping by. And Joe, we
got 6 more minutes, G Mike.
No, we don't. I got is my clock wrong?
Look at that live, 154 minutes. We got 6
more
minutes.
You crazy.
I will answer my brother Spooner. When it was announced that the government is going to or has already signed and agreed to buy the Port Authority for $200 million, forgive my language, not a effing Belizean was consulted to say whether they want to buy that or not. Whether they buy an old pair, our swamp, which was developed and got only small building planet, $200 million. The government already approving at the present budget $450 million to develop the port. And I can tell you the real reason behind that. That have to do with 5 of them who are going to do the tourist ship when we come to the port.
Mm-hmm.
They already got letters of approval that the ship will come and deal with the port and so. Now, listen to this. The former Prime Minister of Belize, who ain't no angel in heaven, took to the media to publicly say that when he was in charge of the government, that they had come to sell the port to him, and that it was somewhere around 60 or 80 million.
Yeah, it was a third of the price.
That's serious thing that, you know. That's serious thing that they came to sell it for 60 million, and this government, because the people want to get legal fees and get commission and get finance fees and all kind of $200 million.
Gentlemen, we're out of time, and my clock said 9:05. I was sitting here at 8. You don't tell me how much time we got. This is it.
Look at the screen.
We're gonna
look at
That's not the screen I'm looking at. I've been sitting here since 7 o'clock. It is now 5 after 9 by my watch. That's what I'm looking at. It was my fault.
Hold on, man. Make Dickie take over. Dickie, try the show now.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, you could do that if you want. But I tell you what, see why they wait for we go. We're doing this another time, right? The man coming. Hold on, see why. Let's finish this, guys. Thanks a lot for coming in, Dickie. We'll do this again. Joe, we're run over you one more time so we could do it properly, right?
And Dickie, you have to answer my question next time. Answer my question. We're getting a good deal for us.
Yeah, right. I mean, our question has been asked by a lot of people. See why we're done here. Next week, guys.
Famous production. Oh, them trending, Jarus and laws, them bending. Yes, them trending, network socializing.
Okay, see
them
why.
Trending, but Jarus and laws, them bending. While them trending, into the depths of hell, them descending. Them used to call it copycat, well now them call it trending. In no matter the phrasing, still mean the same thing. Corruption, destruction and mayhem. We don't know who or what they are praising. If you see one man for the track tomorrow, 10 more jumping. As them bending, yes them trending. Blow fire upon them food when they sell the soul, just a blending. It's a famous production. Oh, them trending, Jarus and laws, them bending. Trending, network socializing. Them trending, but the rules and laws them bending. While them trending, into the depths of hell them descending. Them used to call it copycat, well now them call it trending. In no matter the phrasing, still mean the same thing. Corruption, destruction and mayhem. We don't know who or what they are praising. If you see one man for the track tomorrow, 10 more jumping. Can I take the stress in the land of the living? Sweet suicide they are committing. And then they blame it on the system. Bank know you're broke, but them keep on lending. You know you're broke, but you keep on spending. Few years later, house foreclosing. Contract binding, them trending. Jarus and laws, them bending. Trending, network socializing. Them trending, but Jarus and laws, them bending. While them trending, into the depths of hell, them descending. Taking them stirs, then to the judge, them line. From baseball straight through to land span cycling. Need a little help to keep winning when the youth fan out the show, demoralizing. Britney exposing. Soon you say on and Eve to do the same thing. And if that's sex tape, them making, counting Pam, Ray J and the gal came. Cause them trending, Jarus and laws, them bending. Yes, them trending, network socializing. Them trending, but Jarus and laws, them bending. And while them trending, into the depths of hell, them descending. One precinct start with the stop and the frisking. Soon everybody hands up. Lean against the building, no ID, straight to the bullpen. Police state they are creating. Couple idiots begin this school shooting. Wrong the country, Bushmasters start blazing. Blessed are the heroes who protected the children. Jah have a special place reserved for you to heaven. Trending, Jah rules and laws them bending. Trending, network socializing. Them trending, but Jah rules and laws them bending. While them trending into the